She cheated and asked for a break. So I gave her the time of her life, without me. I'm just confused, she said, looking me straight in the eyes, her voice trembling just enough to seem sincere. I think I need some time to figure things out. Time. That word echoed in my mind like a warning siren. You don't ask for time unless you've already made your decision. And I had seen the message. Just one line on her smartwatch screen as it lit up on the kitchen counter. Last night was amazing. Can't stop thinking about it. From a name I didn't recognize. A name she once said was just a coworker. I didn't say anything at first. I just nodded. Calm, measured. Inside, it felt like the floor had opened beneath me. But I wasn't going to give her the drama she might have been expecting. We'd been together for 7 years. 7 years of building, dreaming, sacrificing. I worked nights, weekends, trying to build a future while she found herself switching careers, dabbling in yoga, photography, even candle making. I supported all of it. Every random passion, every moment she needed space. But now I saw it for what it was. I had been holding everything together while she was already letting go. That night I packed a single bag. Just the essentials. I didn't yell, didn't beg. I left a note that read, "You wanted time. Here it is." And I left. I turned off my social media, deleted the apps, blocked her number. I didn't want closure. I didn't want apologies. I didn't even want answers. What I wanted was to disappear. Not just from her life, from who I had become. The man who accepted being taken for granted. The man who kept hoping she'd turn around and realize what we had. Instead, I drove for hours. No music, no destination. Just the open road and the sound of tires turning against asphalt, like the ticking of a clock I was no longer on. I found a small town off the coast. Quiet, simple. No one knew my name. And for the first time in years, I could breathe. I got a cheap month-to-month apartment and started working for a local construction crew. The pay was terrible, but the work was real. Honest. Something about pouring concrete, framing walls, it felt like I was rebuilding more than houses. I was rebuilding myself. Each morning, I ran along the beach. I shaved my beard, cut my hair, changed my clothes, my walk, my posture. I was no longer the man who waited for her to come home. I was the man who chose to leave. And the further I got from who I was, the more I started to see what I could be. One day, the site foreman asked me, "You ever think about running your own crew?" That question planted a seed I didn't even realize was waiting to grow. I didn't need her time. I just needed mine. For weeks, I kept my head down and worked. My hands grew calloused, my back sore, but my mind, for the first time in a long time, was clear. The pain of what she did never vanished completely, but it dulled with each sunrise I watched alone. There was something healing in silence, something powerful in not responding. I didn't tell anyone where I'd gone. I didn't explain or justify. I let her sit with the absence. And that, I realized, was louder than any words I could have screamed. After 3 months of day labor and small talk, I started taking on side projects, renovating beach houses, fixing up rentals. Word got around fast in the small community, and I found myself turning down offers I'd have once begged for. I registered a business name, printed a few cards, and suddenly I wasn't just surviving, I was building again. But this time it was for me, not for someone else's dream, not to hold together something that was already cracked at the foundation. I poured everything into it, hours, sweat, heart. And when the first year ended, I wasn't just some guy who ran from heartbreak. I was the owner of a profitable renovation company with 2 employees and a waiting list of clients stretching into the next season. I didn't post updates. I didn't scroll through memories. I didn't even say her name. She had taken her time, and I took mine. But while hers was likely spent figuring out how to explain herself, mine was spent becoming someone she wouldn't even recognize. I didn't chase women or try to get even. I focused on becoming someone I could respect again. And for the first time since I could remember, I liked the man staring back at me in the mirror. Stronger, calmer, sharper. I started reading more, journaling, taking photos of buildings, coastlines, Tiny moments of peace that reminded me that solitude wasn't empty. It was full of potential. Then, one day, it happened. I was featured in a local article. From heartbreak to home builds. The man reinventing coastal renovations. It was nothing dramatic, just a spotlight piece on my growing business. A few photos, a quick interview. I didn't think much of it. But somehow she saw it. Maybe someone sent it to her. Maybe she had been quietly searching my name, hoping to find a clue to where I'd gone. Or maybe fate just knew it was time. The message came late, around midnight. Just one line. I saw your article. I'm happy for you. I miss you. I stared at that message for a long time. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel anything, really. Just distance. Not the kind you measure in miles, but the kind you earn. The kind that can't be undone by a text or a tear. A year ago, that message would have destroyed me. Now, it felt like a reminder of how far I'd come. I didn't reply right away. I let her sit with the silence again. She followed up 2 days later with something longer. I made a mistake. I thought I needed space, but I was scared. Everything you did for us. I see it now. I'd love to meet. Just talk. If you're open to that. This time I answered. One coffee. That's all. I didn't agree to meet because I wanted closure. I had already found that on my own. I agreed because sometimes it's good to look your past in the face and see that it no longer controls you. I picked the cafe. Quiet, upscale, not too close to where I lived. I didn't want her seeing too much of my world. She had given that up. The day we met, she looked nervous. Hair done perfectly, makeup just right, like she was trying to rewind the clock. But I wasn't the man she remembered. I wasn't here to be impressed. I was here to finish a story I had already ended. She stood when I walked in, smile trembling slightly. You look different. I am, I said simply, sitting across from her. No hug, no handshake, just two people sharing space, no longer sharing a life. She spoke first, nervously sipping her coffee, recounting what she'd been up to, how the break hadn't been what she expected, how the guy she'd seen turned out to be nothing, how she'd spent the year thinking about me, watching my name disappear from her phone, her feed, her world. I kept hoping you'd reach out, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what to do. You just vanished. I gave you what you asked for, I replied calmly. Time. And now? She asked. Could we maybe start over? I didn't answer immediately. I looked around the cafe, at the sunlight spilling through the window, at the life I had built outside of her. And then I smiled. Not out of bitterness or pride, but peace. I leaned back slightly in my chair, letting her words linger in the air between us. She looked at me with hopeful eyes, as if she still had some kind of hold, as if the past could be repainted just because she now regretted letting it burn. But what she didn't understand, what most people like her never do, is that some choices light fires that don't go out. They consume everything, and when the smoke clears, what's left isn't just different. It's unrecognizable. I sipped my coffee slowly, not because it was good, but because I wanted her to sit in that silence a bit longer. She kept glancing at me like she was waiting for some grand confession, some emotional explosion, maybe a breakdown or a second chance wrapped in desperate forgiveness. But I had none of that left to give. I had already bled out in private, long before she realized what she lost. And now I was calm, cold maybe, but whole. You said you needed space, I said finally. So I gave you the entire world without me in it. You could have filled it with anything you wanted. And you did. You filled it with someone else. She flinched, her lips parting like she wanted to deny it. But she didn't, because she couldn't. I already knew the truth, and denial wouldn't soften it. I made a mistake, she said quietly, her voice cracking in all the right places, like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. I was scared, confused. I thought we were stuck, but I see now it wasn't you. It was me. You were everything I needed, and I raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. Don't, I said. You don't owe me an explanation, and I'm not here for apologies. I didn't come to revisit what we had. I came to confirm what I already knew, that I moved on. Her eyes welled up. So that's it? You're really just done. I looked at her, this woman I once loved with every fiber of who I was, and I couldn't even summon hate anymore. That, more than anything, told me how far I'd come. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. You wanted time apart, I said, and I used mine well. I became someone I'm proud of. Someone I don't want to drag back into that old life. She looked down, tracing her finger along the rim of her coffee cup, blinking hard as a single tear slid down her cheek. Maybe she thought that would move me, but I didn't flinch. I had cried my tears months ago, alone, in silence, without an audience. Hers were too late. I still think about us, she whispered. Every day. I don't, I replied, and it was the most honest thing I'd said all morning. We sat in silence for another long moment. I finished my drink, stood, and pulled out my wallet. I placed a few bills on the table to cover the tab and turned to leave. She called after me, her voice barely holding together. Can I see you again? Even just as friends? I paused, hand on the doorframe. I didn't turn around. I'm not who I was, and you're not part of who I'm becoming, I said. Take care of yourself. And I walked out. Outside, the air felt fresher, the sun warmer. It was like closing a book I had once reread 100 times, finally realizing the ending never changed no matter how many times I flipped back to the start. That chapter was over. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I wasn't even nostalgic. I was free. The drive back to my place was quiet, peaceful. My phone buzzed a few times, her name lighting up the screen again and again. I didn't answer. I didn't block her either. I just let it ring out. Because silence, I learned, is an answer all its own. Back home, I opened the windows, let the breeze drift in, and sat down with a sketch pad. I was working on a new renovation design for a client, something modern, bold, something that looked nothing like the past, just like me. And as I sketched, I smiled. Not because of revenge, not because I'd won, but because I had finally chosen myself. And there is no better feeling than realizing you are enough, without needing someone else to validate it. The road ahead was mine now, and I wasn't looking back. Weeks passed after that coffee meeting, and I never heard from her again. The silence that followed was loud in its own way, but I welcomed it. It meant the past was staying in the past. I kept building projects, routines, relationships with new people who didn't know the version of me that once waited up at night hoping a woman would come home and choose him. The town I lived in had slowly become a reflection of the man I was becoming. I had real clients, real connections, and even a few close friends who didn't know all the details but could tell I'd walked through something that changed me. There was no need to explain it anymore. The way I carried myself said enough. My body was stronger, my eyes clearer, and there was a steadiness in how I moved through the world now. I wasn't chasing anything or anyone. For the first time in my adult life, I was grounded. One weekend, I was invited to a charity fundraiser hosted by a local business group. Normally, I'd skip those things, but one of my clients insisted I come as her guest, said it would be good for networking. I didn't dress to impress, just wore what felt like me. Simple, sharp, no frills. The venue was a restored marina warehouse. Lots of light, ocean breeze drifting in through open doors, the hum of conversation and music creating a strange calm. As I mingled, shaking hands and exchanging laughs, I realized how far removed I was from that version of myself who once stood in a kitchen reading a message that shattered everything. That night, a woman approached me. Someone new, someone different. She asked about my business, how I got into renovations. She wasn't pretending to be impressed or asking the usual surface-level questions. She listened. She laughed at my dry jokes. She didn't know anything about my past, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to protect myself from the idea of starting again. There was no weight, no shadow, just the present moment. After the event, we walked by the pier, the quiet sloshing of water filling the space between our words. She asked if I'd ever been married. I paused. I was close, I said, but life had other plans. She nodded, didn't press. That told me more than any follow-up question could. She wasn't interested in digging up old bones. She was here now, and so was I. When I got home, I sat on my porch with a glass of water. No music, no phone, just me and the night sky. I thought about how easy it had become to breathe again, how that aching feeling in my chest had quietly faded without ceremony. Healing doesn't arrive with fireworks. It slips in like dawn, soft, gradual, undeniable. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to hurt the way I did. The real win was that I no longer carried the pain she left behind. In the months that followed, business boomed. I hired more workers, expanded to a second location down the coast. I was featured in another article, a podcast, even got an offer to be on a small TV segment about home design and coastal living. I turned that one down, too flashy for me, but the offer alone was a sign that the life I was building was bigger than the one I left behind. The man I used to be would have jumped at attention, tried to prove something. Now, I didn't need to prove a damn thing. Every now and then, her name would show up in my suggested contacts, or I'd get a notification that she viewed my profile. I never clicked back. Not once. Not because I was trying to be strong, but because I honestly didn't care what she was doing anymore. Her story no longer concerned me. I had closed that book and shelved it without bitterness. The truth is, she gave me a gift the day she asked for time. She forced me to look at myself, to see how far I drifted from who I wanted to be. And she freed me, though she didn't mean to finally become that man without her dragging me backward. Sometimes people come into your life not to stay, but to push you toward becoming who you were always meant to be. And sometimes, betrayal is the beginning of becoming. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't need to. She had to live with the choice she made. I got to live with the one I made after. And every morning I woke up in my own place, built with my own hands, surrounded by peace I'd earned. I was reminded that some endings are just better beginnings in disguise. It was almost exactly 2 years after I left that I found myself walking into that same cafe again. Not for closure, not for curiosity, but because it had become part of my routine. It was just another place now, stripped of its emotional weight. The barista didn't know my past, didn't know what had happened in that corner booth where I'd once ended the last chapter of a love I had spent years holding on to. Now I just came in for the coffee. I ordered my usual and took a seat by the window, watching the world move on outside, as it always does. That was the strange thing about healing. It doesn't announce itself. There's no finish line, no bell that rings to say you're whole again. One day you just notice you're no longer checking your phone. You're no longer asking, what if? You're simply living. I didn't know where she was now. I hadn't heard from her in well over a year. I assumed she moved on. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe she still thought about me every now and then, wondering if the door she closed so casually could ever be opened again. Couldn't. Not because I hated her, but because I had rebuilt my entire life on the other side of that door. Going back would mean burning the home I had built out of silence, sweat, and self-respect. And I wasn't about to do that. I owed too much to myself now. That afternoon, I had a meeting with a real estate developer about partnering on a new housing project. They wanted me to lead design renovations for a cluster of beachfront rentals. It was a big step, one I wouldn't have believed I was capable of just a couple years ago. But now it felt earned. The meeting went well. They liked the mock-ups, loved my story, the quiet rebuilder, the man who had taken loss and turned it into architecture. There was something poetic about it, I guess, though I didn't see myself that way. I was just a guy who learned the hard way how to stand on his own 2 feet. And I intended to stay standing. Later that week, I got a text from an unknown number. Just a photo of a place we once vacationed at, with a simple caption, "Remember this?" I stared at the screen for a moment. My first reaction was laughter. Soft, real laughter. Not because it was funny, but because of how far away it all felt. That place. That version of me. That hope I used to carry. It was like looking at an old coat you once loved but could never wear again. It just didn't fit anymore. I deleted the message without replying. That weekend, I hosted a gathering at my new home. Friends, colleagues, a few new faces from the town. The woman I'd met at the charity event came too. We weren't rushing anything, just spending time, learning each other slowly. No pressure. No ghosts. She stood beside me in the kitchen, laughing about something someone said in the living room, and I remember thinking, this feels light. This feels like how it should have always been. As the night wound down and the last guests left, I stepped outside to the porch, leaned against the railing, and looked out toward the water. It shimmered in the moonlight, calm and endless. That's when it hit me. I wasn't holding on to anything anymore. Not the pain. Not the betrayal. Not the version of myself that tried too hard for someone who didn't see his worth. She had cheated and asked for time, and I gave it to her. But in doing so, I gave something to myself too: time to grow, time to heal, time to become someone she could never touch again. So, to anyone who's ever been left behind, betrayed, or told they weren't enough, remember this. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone who wronged you is the chance to watch you rise without them. You don't need revenge. You don't need closure. You just need silence, discipline, and patience. Build your life so well that their memory has no place to land. She said she needed time. I gave her the time of her life, without me. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below. I want to hear your stories, your strength, your silence. Let's build something better, together.